Dubious Ones, welcome back to the channel for our final All In review matches. We're down to the final three. But before we get into that, make sure you hit that sub button, smash the like, and leave me your comments on this match down below. But we are getting into Mercedes Moné, the CEO, versus the DMD, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. I have been excited for this match since All In of last year when we first got to see Mercedes in the crowd. I've been fantasy booking this match as this was the big dream match. I was wondering how they were going to pull it off and waiting until this year's All In to pull it off. I was very, very excited going in. The build-up that they did, to me, was pretty much like whatever they did, they couldn't go wrong because this was the big women's match I was looking forward to. As for me, Mercedes is the best women's wrestler. You're not going to change my mind. You're not going to tell me Becky's better. You're not going to tell me Charlotte's better. You're not going to tell me, like, Rhea Ripley is great, superstar. But to me, in ring, Mercedes Moné was my Bret Hart. She was my Bret Hart in the ring. I always thought she made everyone she was in the ring with look a million times better. I thought Charlotte's best matches she's ever had were against Sasha Banks. I thought Bayley's best matches she ever had were against Sasha Banks. I thought all those four horsewomen, everybody's best matches, the common denominator was always Sasha Banks. It was always Mercedes Moné because she was that cog, that Bret Hart that made everyone look better than they were. So for me, I always thought she is the best women's wrestler. Britt Baker obviously being the face that runs the place, the face of AEW for the first formative years of the company. So this to me was always that big match that I wanted to see. Now, let's get into what happened in this match because, did it live up to all the hype I had built up for myself around it? Let's find out. So Dr. Britt Baker surprisingly doesn't get a big elaborate entrance for this match. And I had to wonder if some of the backstage politics or anything, you know, if that stuff with MJF was real, all the things we had heard about going on weeks prior to this match and the suspensions and stuff. I really have to wonder if any of that played any parts in this or what is really going on with Britt backstage, if there are issues there. And I'm really sad if they are because she is definitely was the biggest draw of the women's division for years and is still one of the biggest, and I was happy to see her come back. But either way, was surprised by the fact she didn't get a huge elaborate entrance. But Mercedes definitely does, as she arrives in a chariot with her three corgis, arriving as a queen. She's even wearing a royal cape on her way to the ring. Fans are chanting CEO, CEO, as she makes her way to the ring. She gets right in Britt's face as this match begins. Right away, Camille makes her presence known as Britt goes for an armbar, but Camille holds onto Mercedes' arm, giving Mercedes a chance to deck Britt. They trade momentum back and forth to start, but there is definitely some chemistry issues early on, as, again, Britt Baker's been out for so long. Mercedes was also injured for a very long time. So there was definitely some hiccups I felt like early on in this match. A few miscues that we saw early on, but Mercedes seemed to slow things down and get them back on track. She then hits a beautiful backbreaker over the top turnbuckle to Britt. That looked really, really good. Fans seemed really quiet in the early going of this match, bearing in mind that they had just seen so much wrestling leading up to this match, and it just crescendoed with MJF and Will Ospreay before this match. So I wonder if the placement on this card, where it was, did hurt this match a little bit. I'd really be curious to see if this was, say, one of the opening matches on the card. Say if it was in the place where Mariah May and Toni Storm was, would this have gotten a different reaction? Hindsight's 2020. We'll see. You'll never get to know the answer to that question, but I definitely felt like the crowd was a little quiet early on in this match. But we got a light DMD chance breaking out as Mercedes was on offense. Match felt like the polar opposite of the earlier women's match, as again, that Toni Storm and Mariah May match was absolutely incredible, and the fans were behind it 100%. Every single strike and move thrown, they made it feel like a big deal. Now, whether that's just coming down to the timing of these matches or there was a better build and the fans were more into that match, that's up for debate. But I definitely think, obviously, the Mariah May match and Mariah and Toni Storm had a wonderful year-long build, whereas this match definitely didn't get that. But still, I was so excited for this match. I was just surprised at the crowd reactions early on. I definitely felt different in the early stages, but Mercedes hits a brutal avalanche body slam while sitting on the top turnbuckle. So she was up on the top turnbuckle, and then boom, just body slam Britt right off the top rope, like crazy. Not a spot you see very often. I'm sure I've seen it at some point before in my history of watching wrestling over 30 years, but not a spot I really ever remember seeing, and a very brutal spot. She then goes up to follow up with a Bret Hart style like wrist drop, the double wrist drop kind of under whatever you want to call it, forearm drop. Not quite an elbow, but you know what I mean. Bret Hart or Austin style off the middle rope. Then Britt but Britt got her knees up for that. Britt then goes for a curb stomp, but it gets reversed into a power bomb for a 2 count. Britt gets back on the offense, hits a beautiful flapjack for a 2 count. She pulls out the glove and gets the fans to chant DMD as she goes for the lockjaw early. But Mercedes fights out of it and takes the advantage. She grabs the glove off of Britt, puts it on herself. She mocks Britt and sets her up for a powerbomb. Britt reverses it into an air raid crash and grabs the glove back. They then go through a string of reversals until Mercedes is able to get the upper hand. The fans finally start to get in the match. We are now 13 minutes into this match, and then we finally start getting dueling chants of CEO DMD, CEO DMD, with the fans doing the motions for the DMD every time. But again, 13 minutes into the match, they finally got them on board, but again, it took 13 minutes into this match, which I believe was longer than the entirety of the TNT title match coming up, but stay tuned for that review shortly coming up on the channel. But it really surprised me that it took them this long to get into the match, but they finally did, as the crowd was hot for everything all night. This was the quietest the crowd we had all night, for at least for the main card. But again, I was very, very excited to see this match all year long. The fact that Mercedes wasn't signed when we saw her at All In last year, but I thought it was just an inevitability. The fact that she waited so long, I thought actually was going to help this match, because we weren't waiting a whole year for this match for them to lock up for the first time. I thought this was going to be it, because to me this was the marquee women's match for AEW as soon as Mercedes signed. As I said, I was really looking forward to it more than Toni and Mariah, but I definitely have to say I really enjoyed the Toni Storm and Mariah match better, and I don't know if it was just down to crowd reaction. That did definitely play a part, but I felt chemistry in this match was hitting. There was points where they were there. There's a couple botched spots. They just didn't seem to be on the same page. Some spots early on the match, as well as a couple later in the match. But I mean, it wasn't a horrible match by any stretch. The crowd was pretty lively all night. Even though there was a couple of flubs, this wasn't like a bad match, like I said, but the fans just really didn't seem to be giving them that same benefit of the doubt, that same love that they were giving, the other women's match or a lot of the other matches on this card. Regardless, the girls kept going. They kept, as they ended up fighting atop the top turnbuckle, where it looks like Mercedes is going for another body slam off the top rope, or off the top turnbuckle, but it gets reversed into a wicked power slam. This was the incredible spot that made me pop huge when it hit. The fans also in the arena popped huge for this spot. And it gave them a huge round of applause. This is where I wish they took their time a little bit more after this spot, because this was your highlight, your Twitter spot, your GIF that you would see like from this match. This was the big spot of the match, and it looked absolutely phenomenal. Like this to me reminded me of when they had the reverse Frankensteiner in the Bayley Sasha Banks takeover match in NXT, where they did like the reverse Frankensteiner off the top. That got such a huge reaction. That was like such a huge moment that stands out in my mind. This was that moment for this match, and I just really wish they took their time just a little bit more to sell it, let it breathe. As Britt went pretty much right away, pretty quickly, she went and hit a curb stomp onto Mercedes after this, but they were still in the middle of picture-in-picture showing off the big spot. and the fans were like really getting into that spot, really letting it sink in. So I just really wish they'd given the spot maybe 10 more seconds to breathe before going into the next move, as like the fans really were appreciating that move, and I just don't think the curb stomp got really any reaction because they were still like, that was such a big spot and they just really didn't let it breathe. Regardless, I definitely thought that was the highlight of the match. Britt does go for a pin after the curb stomp, but Camille puts Mercedes' foot under the bottom rope. As Britt is now distracted with Camille, Camille places the TBS title down off of her shoulder into one corner and then lures Britt and the ref to the other side of the ring, giving Mercedes a chance to grab the TBS title. Mercedes winds up to hit Britt, but the ref turns around and she nearly hits the ref. The ref grabs the TBS title from Mercedes, and he's giving that, and as he's giving it to the timekeeper, Camille gets up on the apron while her holding Mercedes' New Japan title, and she fakes, and then Britt actually falls to the ground, Eddie Guerrero style, and fakes being hit by the belt as she dropped to the ground while Camille is still holding up the belt. The ref turns around and sees this, but doesn't call for a disqualification, which is why I thought the spot to be a little strange, as if he thought she hit Britt and she was down from a belt shot, why wouldn't he disqualify Mercedes then? Right? That was my process. Like, does he have to see it to disqualify it? I guess is the thought process there. But regardless, it was a fun call. You know, the Eddie Guerrero spot, obviously, in a Mercedes match makes sense. It was a fun spot. The crowd definitely popped for this. And then the ref ejected to Camille at this point. The fans were laughing and they were chanting, na 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 na, na 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 na, hey hey hey, goodbye. So the spot really did work, for sure, 100%. The fans got into it, so I can't say I have too much of a problem with it because it was, you know, the Eddie Guerrero callbacks in a Mercedes match. You're gonna get them guaranteed, right? Britt then hits Mercedes with a Panama Sunrise for a big pop, obviously the Adam Cole link in there, followed by another curb stomp. Then she goes for the pin. 1, 2, and a kick out. The fans definitely bid on this false finish. They popped huge. Britt then goes for the lockjaw, but Mercedes bites down and is able to bites down on her fingers and is able to get out of it. And they then counter each other back and forth all the way up to their feet, where Mercedes hits a Moné maker or a money maker for the 1, 2, 3, and that's it. No kick out of the money maker. As they were countering back and forth to their feet from it, there was a little messiness there. It could have been a little cleaner, but I saw what they were going for. Again, I was definitely disappointed in this match a little bit. I don't know if the fans were stunned as well after the finish, but there was not a big reaction to the finish at all. Also surprised we didn't get the return of Jamie Hayter in this match. I didn't watch the pre-show, so I didn't realize that Jamie Hayter had returned in the pre-show. Right? I didn't realize that had already happened on this card because I thought, why are they not bringing her back in her, in her home country, in her hometown? Why aren't they bringing her back at Wembley? And this would have been a big spot to do it, to maybe stop the interference from Camille and have that going. But there's reports that Jamie Hayter and maybe Britt Baker aren't on the same page as far as backstage goes. I don't know if there's any truth to that, but that would then make sense as to why Jamie Hayter's immediately going into feud with like Saraya and them, as opposed to having anything to do with Britt Baker. Again, I don't know if those rumors are true. I just thought it would have been a fun spot here to have her come out, get a big, huge reaction from the crowd, take out Camille, they brawl up the stairs, and then you get the finish. But I would have thought that would have led to a Britt Baker win, which is what I thought we were getting going into this, because I definitely thought she was going to win. But it did not happen, and Britt did not get the win, even after this being her big return match, after being on the shelf for so long. So I definitely was surprised. And I wonder if the issues backstage really affected anything at all, or if this was Tony Khan's plan all along. Either way, I thought the match was disappointing, as I mentioned, but that's just because I had such big expectations going into this match in my head, as I'd been building up this match for nearly a year myself in my head, just knowing that if Mercedes signed to AEW, this was the biggest match they could have done with her, and it would have been a huge return for Britt, which it was. I definitely thought this match was possibly going to steal the show and be match of the night. Unfortunately, it was not. Mercedes is my favorite women's wrestler, and Britt was always one of my favorite AEW talent. So this to me was a dream match, and it definitely had its moments, but I'm more hoping Britt is okay, and it's just a little ring rust from so much time off. As the chemistry in the match, I thought, the chemistry early in this match was not great. I definitely thought they got back on track, but they definitely felt a little bit off in different spots. Either way, Mercedes is still your TBS champion. I'd have to rate this match probably just about probably a 5 out of 10. I would honestly say probably a 5 out of 10. I'd like to see them wrestle again though. Once Britt is back in prime form, I definitely think there's room for that rematch, because this to me was not the best outing for either of them. Maybe they could do a rematch in either Britsburg, if they come back to Pittsburgh, or they could do the rematch in Boston. Either way, you would get some huge reactions for either of them if you did it in either of their hometowns. I think that would probably be the best place to do it. I don't know what their upcoming shows look like. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be super soon for any reason. But I would love to see these two get another chance, another kick at the bucket. Just because I thought this match just was a little disappointing for me. Again, having such high hopes, having my favorite women's wrestler wrestle to me, who was my favorite women's wrestler in AEW, in Britt Baker, and so happy to see her back. So happy to see her come get a big return. So yeah, I just would really like to see them have another crack at it, because I think they could definitely have a banger and steal the show for sure. As we know, Britt Baker's had some incredible bangers in AEW and some great matches with like Thunder Rosa. Their Lights Out match they had was really cool. And Britt's just had a lot of great matches over her career in AEW. And we know Mercedes has had some of the biggest matches of all time at WrestleManias or at any WWE pay-per-views, and NXT, of course, at the takeovers. So I definitely think the two of them have the talent to really put on a show-stealing match and get, have a 9 out of 10 match or an 8 out of 10 match. This, to me, was not it on this night. But anyways, I would like to know your thoughts in the comments down below. I don't know if it was just, because to me, it wasn't just the fan reactions or lack thereof in the first majority, like the first 13 minutes of this match. To me, that would have helped, obviously, if the fans were super behind it. But it just seemed like the chemistry just wasn't there. And I don't know if that's a Britt situation. Like, is Britt difficult to work with? We don't know. We know that she had issues with Thunder Rosa, but she ended up having banger matches with Thunder Rosa. So, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But either way, like I said, please sound off in the comments down below, as I want to know your feedback. What did you think of this match? And what was your favorite match on the card? Either way, Dubious Ones, thanks for watching. And I will catch you in the next one, as we'll be coming up very, very shortly here with my TNT and then finally my world title review from All In. That's going to do it for this one. Dubious Ones, deuces.